Today we have a very interesting topic, a very interesting guest. I'll let him introduce himself. I know him as Rabbi Yossi or Yosef. I don't know how he likes to be called. I have great respect for this individual. Great respect. I respect people who aren't scared to say what they feel is true and correct, no matter the consequences. Today, I'm going to try to just give a basic intro of what we're going to be talking about here. People are familiar with the group Chabad Lubavitch. There's a group called Messianism that they say that they believe that their Rebbe, their departed Rebbe, some say he's not departed, some say he's hidden, but that he was and is the Messiah. There's a group within this group that goes further, and they attribute divine qualities to the Rebbe. They're called Elokistim, colloquially. I'm not sure what the internal language is for a person who believes like that. But long story short, they are people who believe that the Rebbe is God. That is all I'm going to say about it. I don't want to butcher the idea, but I think that it's only fair to get their side of the story. To explain it, that being said, go ahead, Rabbi.
So, of course, we have this relationship. Let's start from the beginning. And I would want to go through the Rambam's definition of God, Yesod HaYesodot V'Amud HaChochmot, for a little bit, just to give a conceptual foundation of what Hashem is according to Judaism. And of course, when we talk about Elokistim, when we're basically mixing or merging a leader of a generation, whether it's Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe, or anyone else, with God, so there are certain merges that are quote unquote, like we said, acceptable, but then there are merges that go out of the realm of the service of Hashem and into point blank idol worship, just like Pharaoh. Let's talk about Pharaoh for a second, and then we'll go to the Rambam's definition. So Pharaoh, he gets a blessing from Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu tells him, because you gave my family, the Hebrews, you gave us food during the years of hunger, even though Yosef is the one who actually saved Mitzrayim. But because Yaakov was being political and being respectful to Paro as the king of Egypt, he said, whenever you go to the Nilus, the water is going to rise for you. But instead of Paro telling that to his fellow Egyptians, telling them, hey, Jacob, the father of Joseph, came to visit us, and he gave us a blessing, and now every time I come to the Nilus, to the Nile, the water will rise. Instead of saying that, he told his people, I'm God, serve me, and if you want me to prove that I'm God, I'm going to go to the Nile, and you're going to see the water rise. In other words, and that's the whole concept of Khartume Mitzrayim, the witchcraft of Mitzrayim. The secret of the witchcraft is to be able to siphon off energies from Kedusha that are supposed to make it their way all the way to the children of Israel, and to somehow have the legitimacy to take that Kedusha and use it for the Sitra Achra, to use it for the Klippa. It's like the mafia. They know that there's a certain truck that's supposed to come from this area to drop it off at the store, and then their job is to make sure that on the highway somewhere, a few of the stuff on the truck fall off. At some gas station, they or whatever it is, they stick up. So that's the same thing as in the Khartoumim of Mitzrayim, the witchcraft of Egypt. Was to be able to siphon off energy that wasn't for them. That's in general. Now, when we're talking about Elikus, when we're talking about serving Hashem, so the Rambam says that there are, let's start it off. Yesod HaYesodot V'Amud HaChochmot, which is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Leida Sheyesham Matzui Rishon. V'hu mamtzi kol nimtza, v'chol ha-nimtzoim mishamayim v'aretz u'ma shebeneim, lo nimtzu ela me'amitas himatzoi. Okay? The foundation of all foundations and the pillar of all wisdoms, to know that there is one who existed first, and he is the one who creates all that is. He invents, or he creates all that is found, and all those who are found in heaven and earth and everything in between, do not exist only from that truth of his existence. And if you think, and I'm going to base, and if you think that he does not exist, then nothing else can exist because he's the only thing that exists. And if you will think that all that exists, once again, ואם יעלה על הדעת שאין כל הנמצא מלבדו מצויים, הוא לבדו יהיה מצוי. ולא יבטל הוא לבטלם, שכל הנמצאים צריכים לו והוא ברוך הוא, אינו צריך להם ולא לאחד מהם. So we all need him because he is the source of everything, and he doesn't need us. That's the premise of godliness. So now, moving into Elokistim and the Chabad movement, yeah? So when a Chabad Chassid is studying, like I did, and you're learning in yeshiva, so you begin to learn Chassidus, you learn about what's a tzaddik, what's a rasha, what's a Beinani, and this and that, and then you learn different ma'amarim of Chassidus, and eventually you start to think to yourself, where do the Rabbeim have all this information? Where do they know all this knowledge from? And you keep learning and you keep learning, and as you're progressing in this learning, in this experience, you come to a point where you're like, okay, the only connection I have to the Eibishter is through my Rebbe. So it's not such a far-fetched thing to assume that, especially in the beginning of the study. And we have, like, you're right, Rabbi Asher, it's in the Zohar primarily, not in the Gemara, where it says that Rabbi Shimon tells his students, if you want to see godliness, come look at me. Come see my face and you'll see God. Why would Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai say this? Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai knew that he is 100%, his mind, his speech, his actions are all 100% in line with God's will. And so much so that when they go out of the cave, we see that they almost burn down the world, and then they have to come back and look at it in a lilamed zchut. So when you sit in a cave for 13 years and all you do is learn Torah, and eventually you get to Gilu Eliyahu or whatever it was, and the reason you were in the cave in the first place was because you denounced Rome, Merida b'malchus of Avodah Zarah, you denounced the matrix and you totally became one with Hashem. So then when people are going to see you, they're going to be looking at the Eibishter. They're going to be looking at the closest thing they can get to God in a physical body in their experience. So that's
hold that idea.
The way it goes. Yeah.
A lot of people who just hopped in now and they don't know what we're talking about. We're discussing the notion of Elokistim, the idea within Chabad, or some within Chabad, that believe that the Rebbe is God himself. That's what we're discussing, and I believe that the rabbi here considers himself one of the Elokistim, correct?
No, I don't consider myself Elokist. No, I don't.
Okay.
But I will say that I did entertain the thought, and I did research the Chassidus that the Elokistim base their belief on, and I know what they're referring to, and I'm familiar with what they're referring to. Of course, are they wrong?
Yeah.
It depends on what level. Simply speaking, halachically speaking, of course they're wrong. There's no two ways about it. Spiritually speaking, just like we said here, everything that exists in the world is Hashem.
Now, what halachic principle are they going against? I'm just curious.
Hashem Echad. When you say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad.
Have a response to that, and they'll say, the Sefirot is a response to that. That there's, like, although there's one, there's 10 emanations, and then there's Partzufim and the Atzilut, and so Echad doesn't necessarily just mean Echad. I'm convinced of the idea, right? Clearly, Echad is Echad. Rav Hershel Schachter says that Echad could mean unique also, that he's unique amongst all the other gods.
Echad Yachid U'Michad. Okay, there's a lot of ways to go about it, but Ein Mikra Yetzim Midei Pshutai. The Hashem is one, and when we go Anechi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzisicha Meretz Mitzrayim Mebeis Avadim, the first commandment in the 10 Commandments, I am the God that took you out of Egypt from a house of slaves. So there's the elements of oneness in Hashem. Of course, Moshe Rabbeinu is part of that story. Okay, he's the one. You see, let's look at, for example, at Har Sinai. So the
Yeah, but
first two
believing the Rebbe is
commandments.
God. I'm sorry. Hold on a
Yeah.
second. Like believing the Rebbe is God is not shituf, right? Because you're believing the Rebbe is God. You're not saying that there's a partnership in the Godhead. So how would that go against Echad?
Now, Rav Asher, let me give it to you like this. Anochi Hashem, the Yidden hear the first two Aseres Hadibros, and every time they die. They hear Anochi, they die. They hear Lo Yilecha, and they die. And then what happens is it becomes revealed that they don't have, like what Trump would say, they don't have the stamina to be able to withstand a full-fledged Gilui Elikus. And the Yidden actually beg Moshe Rabbeinu, please, let Hashem tell you the rest of the Ten Commandments, and you convey them to us. Because if we hear it directly from Hashem, we're going to have Kalois HaNefesh. And it says that Hashem saved. So there's 3 times of Tchias HaMeisim. The first one was when the Yidden accepted Anochi Hashem Elokecha. The second one, Lo Yilecha. And the third one's going to be La'asid Lavai in the time of Mashiach, when the dead are going to be resurrected. So when you have and Moshe Rabbeinu agrees, and Hashem also agrees, and Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu the last 8 of the 10 Commandments, and Moshe Rabbeinu transmits that to the Jewish people secondhand. So you see that on one hand, of course, it's obvious that the Jewish people understood especially the generation that left Mitzrayim, that were witness to all the miracles of Hashem. They knew exactly that Hashem is one. They saw it, they felt it, they understood it. It says that the kids raised their finger and they said, "Hine Elokeinu zeh, zeh Hashem kivinu lo v'yosheinu." They were able to see. What do we say in the Az Yashir? Also, we say, "Zeh keli v'anveu Elokei aviv aramenu." So they saw Hashem working in miracles, and they saw it and it says that even a maidservant leaving Egypt saw what prophets will never see hundreds or thousands of years later. So even if you were the Erev Rav, okay, you weren't even technically a Hebrew, you just kind of tagged along for the ride, you would probably witness more miracles. Even if you were an Egyptian, in the time of exiting Egypt, you'd probably witness God in a more realistic way than prophets later on in the first and second, maybe the second temple or whatever. So when the Jews have this relationship with Moshe Rabbeinu and Hashem, it's very, very clear the differences but today the real question is, because our generation is so degraded spiritually, and we don't have the merits for open Gilui Elikus, we don't have the merits for revealed godliness. So is it correct to assume that the closest we're ever going to get to serving God is through our leaders, our teachers? That's, I think, the correct question, the right question that we have to address this with.
Yeah, but if someone
In other
said,
words, yeah, go ahead, Rabbi.
that about shituf, I mean, if someone says that the Rebbe is God, not that God's the Rebbe, that's a very subtle point there. What would you say makes them outside of the scope of halacha or anything that may appear by Chazal, or even outside, like the meaning of a Rebbe being the Atzmut and Kuf? Like,
So,
yeah.
So when someone does something and he does it l'shem shamayim, he does it for the sake of heaven, he does it according to halacha. The second someone goes out of halacha, and it doesn't matter for whatever reason, then you know that he missed the point. There was a lady that was considered an Elokist in Crown Heights. She had a very big following, and my friend Simcha Taish, which is my friend, he was my chavrusa in Crown Heights. He went and he wrote her an email, or he went to speak to her on his own, and he asked her, "You guys, you Elokistim, that you guys don't fast, and you guys say that certain elements of the Geula already started, that certain mitzvahs are changed, and that mitzvahs betelis lasid lava is already in session, and all kinds of things like that." So, which part? She asked him the same question. She asked her, which part of that is Elokistim, that you say that the Rebbe is Elikus, or that we already started the Geula process, and that everything, or which? So she said, first of all, you have to know I'm a balas tshuva. A lot of the stupidities that you guys see me do is just because I have a Yetzer Hara, just like everybody else. Not to be confused with my theories of that the Geula already started and blah, 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 and that maybe kosher is not what kosher is, whatever. So we have to always, like, just like when Korach and the Meraglim are leaving, we're now in Parshas Korach. So just like when Korach and the Meraglim are leaving Mitzrayim and they get stuck because of their own self-interests, and they stop to listen to the Ratzon Elyon, to the will of God, so it becomes clear that they have their own interests. And the second their interests do not align with Moshe Rabbeinu, with Hashem's command to go into Eretz Yisrael, you see that it's disconnected from Hashem, it's disconnected from the source, and it's something foreign. This could happen to the greatest people.
Sorry, what it sounds like to me is that what you're saying is that at its core, the idea is not wrong, but this generation is not able to absorb it properly. So perhaps we shouldn't be so forthright on teaching it, just because, like, if you feed a starving person too much food, you could end up harming that person. I mean, am I like a little close to what you're saying?
To that, I'll answer that they asked the Rebbe. There was a groups of girls that were coming to Crown Heights, and they wanted to take a tour of Crown Heights. And the rabbi, I forgot what his name was, Rabbi Epstein, I think he was. He asked the Rebbe, should I show these teenage girls the woman's mikvah and explain them the basics of family purity in Judaism, or is it not right to show them that because they're still not married yet, and so on? So the Rebbe said that today, because the world is such a degraded place, and there's no purity of community and stuff like that, they're probably going to be exposed to the wrong ways anyway, and they may have already been exposed to the wrong ways of building a family. So show them the mikvah of the woman, explain them the laws of family purity according to Judaism, because you better if they're not going to hear it from you the right way, they're going to hear it the wrong way from someone else. So on that basis, I say that because we have so many elements of confusion between Hashem and Yashka, at least in the world, and also, I mean, with people in the Orthodox community trying to figure out what the deal is with Chabad, I think that there's no choice but to deal with it a little bit, at least, to explain it to the best of our ability. I don't know if our ability is the best, but to give some people some kind of concept. There has to, for me, it's important like this. There has to be an understanding that there's a oneness of Hashem. He is higher than all image. He is higher than anything that a human being can understand. He is, like we said, the Mamsi Kol Nimtza. He creates all creations. There's no such a thing as anything other than him. The only ingredients to the entire world is him. It's like tofu. You know, you see a tofu restaurant, they have chicken tofu, they have cheese tofu, and it's just from the seasoning and all kinds of other things. But it's all the same tofu. They have a tofu soup.
Like a Bark Spinoza, and for some reason the community in Portugal considered it pantheism or panentheism, I don't remember exactly, and excommunicated him because of it. But it seems like they never learned Hasidus, because there was a rabbi, I don't know if he's a rabbi, but he wrote a book. I don't know, Gil Locks, right? I mean, so Gil Locks is, I don't know if he's a Lubavitch but Lubavitch brought him back to Judaism. So he wrote a book. I think he got a haskama from the Rebbe called All is One, or God is one, but in some way trying to prove how everything is God, not in terms of just having a spark, but like mamish gods and everything. And it was a book that was well received in the Hasidic world. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I read his book about his whole, from hippie to from hippie in time, from what is it?
Back to Earth, I think that's the name of that book.
Yeah, from the hippie in time in the over there. So, yeah, he's an interesting fellow, and there is this oneness in the world, and it goes in line with a lot of, I don't know what they call themselves today. I don't know, spiritual people or whatever, in all kinds of levels. That there's this oneness in the world of everything. It's a very famous psychological. It's a documented concept. But the way it is in Yiddishkeit is that Hashem is everything. That's the bottom line. If you have a teacher that can teach you Torah, and he's your best bet at getting closer to Hashem, you need to give him the respect as if he is God, because he's going to get you to God. We see this in Pirkei Avos. It says, "Veheve misabek be'afar agleim." You have to run. It's just in the first parak on the first page. You have to run after the dust of their feet, and you have to drink in thirst the words that they say. When you find someone that can teach you Torah, you have to understand the value. And you have to understand that the chances of you reaching Elikus without properly studying the Torah is very, very close to none. There's also a lot. You see, some people also think they learn. They have the art scroll in their house. They have the Gemara with all the English, and they have a lot of Sfarim, and they research and they listen to Shiurim on YouTube, and it's all good. But if you can find a physical rabbi that you can study Torah with, that is the transmission of the oral tradition. In other words, the oral tradition, the Torah Shebaal Peh, eventually, just like the concept of smicha needs to be handed from generation to generation, there has to be a physical transition from generation to generation. So much so that there was the Rebbe Yitzchak Mibraditchev had a kitrug, or he had a big problem with the way the Mittel Rebbe was teaching Chassidus. And then the Alter Rebbe came to him and he said, look, why do you have a problem that he's teaching Hasidics? So he said, because our Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, said no one's allowed to teach Hasidus to other people unless they heard it from him personally, so that it shouldn't go out of context. So how is the Mittel Rebbe teaching Hasidus when he didn't hear it directly from the Baal Shem Tov or from the Baal Shem Tov's students? So the Alter Rebbe told the Rebbe Yitzchak Mibraditchev, all the Chassidus that he's teaching is my Chassidus. And I saw the Baal Shem Tov in real life. So he said, you saw him in a vision? Did you conjure him, or you saw him in real? He said, no, I physically saw him in real life, and we know the story of the Alter Rebbe had his upshernish with the Baal Shem Tov.
Okay,
yeah.
So, finish your story. I'm sorry. Yeah.
My point is that the same way the oral tradition needs to be passed down from generation to generation in order to truly appreciate the Torah correctly and to be part of that Messiah. So when you find a Rebbe that has, let's say like the Rebbe, for example, that goes back to the Baal Shem Tov, no questions asked. So when the Rebbe opens his mouth, he's not just saying his opinions, he's saying 9 generations or more, all the way to the Baal Shem Tov, all the way to the Maharal of Prague, probably all the way to David HaMelech. That's what you're getting. You're getting Torah Shebaal Peh in a very, very pure form. So when you connect to the Rebbe, it's your best bet to connecting to the Eibishter. That's just the...
What's the actual Aveira here? Well, so you're saying that if someone believes that the Rebbe is truly in Atzmut in a Guf, right, the divine essence in bodily form, i.e. God, can you explain to me what's the actual prohibition? I mean, what's the actual...
I would say if you see someone carving out an image of the Rebbe, a big statue of the Rebbe, putting it up in his living room and praying to the Rebbe, that would constitute Avodah Zarah.
That's not what they do, right?
That's exactly.
Elokistim,
they don't.
Like they're not, like of the Kohavim Umazalot, right? I mean, they're not, they're kosher. I mean, you're essentially saying.
I'm saying that look, let me give another example a little bit closer to mainstream Chabad. We have people that see the kids screaming Yechi Adeneinu Moreinu V'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach L'Olam Va'ed to the Rebbe's place in 770, and they say that that's suspect for Avodah Zarah. Yeah? So now, let's unpack that. I had a discussion with Rabbi David Bar Chaim about this topic, and he was in one of our groups in the Sanhedrin initiative, Bet Havad LaChachamim, which is for the judges, and I wrote something along the lines, some announcement that I had, and I mentioned the Rebbe, and I wrote Rebbe Melech HaMashiach Shlita. So he exited the group, and he said to me, no, that's too much. I can't be in a group when there's a chashash of Avodah Zarah. So I spoke to Rabbi Bar Chaim after that, and I said to him, what's the problem with saying Rebbe Melech HaMashiach Shlita? So he said, if you're saying that he's alive, and you're saying this, he kind of like, he didn't say anything specific, but I told him like this: we say David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim, and we say Tzadikim b'mitatam kruim Chaim. Means that in Judaism it's known that we're allowed to call the righteous that have passed living, and that's why we can say David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. And we say in the Gemara, we speak about it, Mazaroi b'chaim, Avhu b'chaim, as long as his children are alive, he is also alive, his spirit lives on. And Chantu Chantayu, Safdu Savdaya, why did they bury Yaakov? Because they didn't know that he's still alive. And different things, there's different discussions in the Gemara about this, but the bottom line is that in the truth of creation, a tzaddik that connects himself to the Ein Sof lives on. And I told him, according to halacha, tzaddikim b'misasam kruim chaim, there's no issue with calling a righteous person alive. So he said, yeah, but the intent of the Hasidim is that they actually believe the Rebbe is alive. I said to him, but halacha is not about intent. Halacha is about action.
How big is the group of Elokistim in the Chabad world, honestly, percentage-wise? Because I know there's people, I mean, I was talking to like Yehuda Huskalevich.
Huskalevich, yeah.
I think, and he told me about many that he knows personally, and it's bigger than people actually think, right? So what would you say percentage-wise? Like between Kfar Chabad, Crown Heights?
I'll tell you. I grew up in Crown Heights, and I spent time in Kfar Chabad. There's not one shul that's an Elokist shul. Okay, it doesn't exist. There's not one school that's an Elokist school. It's truly just an ideology that let's put it this way: if the Elokistim were to get legitimacy, it would have to be through the Messianism. And the biggest rabbi of recent in the Messianist community that was well respected was Rabbi Shvei. Rabbi Shvei was a rabbi, for example. There was a big fight in the community regarding dollars on Sunday, that the Bachurim set up the Rebbe's place for dollars, and they keep giving it out till this day, every Sunday in 770. So there were some Chabadniks that said that there's a problem halachically with doing that, and they were literally about to they were literally about to get into a fist fight with the Bachurim that were doing it, and they decided that for the sake of peace, they're going to go to Rabbi Shvei, because he's a respected rabbi by the Messianism and by the non-Messianism, and whatever he says is going to be what they're going to do. And when they went to him, he said, there's no problem giving out dollars for tzedakah and to continue what the Rebbe's custom is. There's no halachic issue with that, and they can sing they can sing Yechi Adonenu. It's a general wish for Mashiach. There's nothing halachically binding with an issue. Just like they sang Yechi Adonai Melech David La'ilam, which also goes on his kingdom in general. Yechi Adonenu is a general. It doesn't have the Rebbe's name in it. It's a general bracha.
Yeah.
Physically in the world, and it's fine, and the Bachram can give out tzedakah. So Rabbi Shvei is a very respected rabbi, and when he heard about this lady that was officially going out with this Elikus movement, he put out a letter that nobody that's a Frum Yid should have anything to do with her, and nothing that she does is binding and respect, and no one should respect anything that they do. And that was the end of that as far as the Messianist movement is concerned. So there's no credibility to the official organization, at least.
Like the war with the tunnels is also between these two groups.
The tunnel issue is that there was so much politics forever in Chabad about, again, Messianism, Gabayim, this, that, the other. There's just a lot of politics, and even though 770 should have been expanded 30 years ago, already there wasn't any room for in 770 to daven, to learn. And all the property has been purchased already, and it's already technically part of Merkers or whatever the big organizations of Chabad. Because the Messianism and the Antis, or the Gabayim and Krinsky or whatever it was, were all throwing in all their millions of dollars with lawyers and going to court against each other in the secular courts in order to prove that they should get all the ownership. They weren't looking to settle with each other. They didn't trust each other. And each one thought that he's doing against the Rebbe's will. So what happened is that you had a situation of stalemate. 770 is not being renovated. 770 is not being expanded, even though they own all the property from Eastern Parkway all the way to Union Street, all along Kingston Avenue. And it was just a stalemate. So the Bachurim are the ones who suffer the most, because they're the ones that have to wake up every day and study in 770. So they're sitting like sardines, one on top of another, and they barely have any room to learn. And so they find themselves literally running out of space. So they together with the Mexicans that actually clean up 770 and get paid to clean the whole place up. So the Mexicans that clean 770 we're also in agreement that 770 needed to be expanded. So everybody that actually learns and davens in 770 totally understood that it needs to be expanded. The only ones who didn't understand it were the guys that never even come to 770, and they spend more time in court fighting about who's in charge than actually davening and learning in 770. And they have their own little private shul under their house that they go daven with all their friends and eat herring every morning and drink vodka. So what happens is,
on the tunnel side of it.
yeah, I'm from the founding members of the whole Expand 770 operation. Baruch Hashem, I can say.
Good question.
Yeah.
If someone believes that Mashiach is here, right? What's the actual isser of not holding by all these additional fasts that it teaches that will cease when Mashiach Vadai actually comes?
So I think that the correct way to look at the fasting. So first of all, again, like we said, as a healthy or from Yid, we have to always look at halacha. Certain fasts are more strict than other fasts. Certain fasts, according to halacha, you might be able to actually get away with. According to halacha, if it's a little bit of a problem for you, but some fasts are extremely severe. If someone's not fasting on Yom Kippur, he's in a bit of a problem if he claims to be following the Torah and mitzvahs, and so on and so on. So every fast legufo. When we talk about la'asid lavoy, all the fasts are going to turn into yamim tovim, is the element of oitcha Hashem ki anaftabi. Thank you, Hashem. We will thank Hashem for the troubles we went through. And to give an example of that is like a millionaire that he comes to a place in his life that he appreciates the time when he was living out of his van or he was living out of his car, because that's what hardened him and that's what gave him appreciation for when he's on top, not to throw his money away like garbage and to appreciate where he's holding. So when we arrive at a place in the Geula that we are able to turn around and say, thank you, Hashem, for the misery we went through, that's when the fasts are going to turn into Yamim Tovim. And I don't think, especially now, we still have a lot of issues in Am Yisrael. There's a war going on in Eretz Yisrael. There's a lot of garbage going on. We're not there yet. We're not there yet where we can say that the suffering of Am Yisrael is a good thing. There are people mourning every day. There's unfortunately soldiers being killed in Eretz Yisrael. Am Yisrael in general is mourning. We have hostages, unfortunately, and there's a lot of issues and tsaris that are going on. So to say that we're right now already in that time period that we can actually halachically bend the fasts, I don't think we're there yet.
The people who have a Suda on Tisha B'Av, right? I mean, I've heard there's people in Kfar Chabad, there's people, essentially, that many of the Elokistim actually have a meal on Tisha B'Av. What would be halachically not allowed with that gesture?
So, first of all, let's talk about why they would have a Suda on Tisha B'Av specifically. Yeah, there's Tainus Esther, there's a lot of different holidays or whatever you want to call it, where you can have a Suda. Not holidays, I'm sorry, fast days. But specifically Tisha B'Av is the day that Mashiach was born. Why was Mashiach born on Tisha B'Av? Because Hashem won't leave Am Yisrael in Golus without option for Geula. So in other words, Hashem is Makdim Turufa Lamaka. Hashem, so the Tisha B'Av, we know the reason we fast on Tisha B'Av is the day that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So it's a terribly sad day, but on the other hand, it's also a day that Mashiach is born. And of course, we ask, was he like literally a baby born? Or was he a tzaddik that now reached a level where he can be Mashiach? In other words, Mashiach was born, the Redeemer was born. So I think for the most part, it means a tzaddik already existed in their time, and now he had a gilui or the opportunity or the option to become Mashiach if the Am Yisrael repents. So that's the reason why Tisha B'Av specifically is. So in other words, they're not celebrating the Churban Abayis. What they are celebrating in their Seudah, at least I'm just telling you, not without getting into the halacha yet, but what they're celebrating is the birth of Mashiach. Just like Rabbi Akiva, when he saw the Shualim, he was laughing, and the Talmidim were crying, and then they asked him, why are you laughing? And he said, well, once you see the Shualim, then you know that we can move on to the next nevuos, which is that everything's going to be going in the right direction. So, halachically, I'd have to open up Shulchan Aruch and check the Tisha B'Av laws. I don't know them off the back of my hand, but I can try to do that right now. Give me a second.
If someone believes that the Rebbe is God, okay, can they still be a kosher Yid?
Can they? Well, what kind of Yid are we talking? Is he keeping Shabbos? Is he keeping kosher? Is he keeping?
Right. I mean, they happen that regarding Mashiach and regarding God and the Atzilut, that their Rebbe, their teacher, in some way, is God Himself.
Well, Rabasha, I want to answer that like this. I'll say it like this: if the person is an Elokist and he came to that conclusion through learning his whole life in Chabad, I will assume that he's doing it in the right way. Like when I was in 770, there was a chazan that used to get up to daven, and when he used to get to the near Yishtabach over there, he would say Vayaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe avdoi, and he would say it extra loud, and they believed in Hashem and in Moshe his servant. But what's that? That's a pasuk in Torah. Okay, so if we're going to assume that the person seems to be an Elokist, but he's doing it from an chinuch that is of a Talmud Chacham, I will have to be done him lekaf schus that whatever he's doing is not avodah zarah. If he's someone that doesn't have the masoret, he doesn't have the tradition, and he just kind of jumped on this bandwagon, maybe in order to run away from his Jesus is God, or he's doing it kind of in middle of something else, then I would be more worried that he might misfire, and that his way of understanding the Rebbe is Hashem is a little bit. It could turn into idol worship much quicker.
I'm not going to press you on any more of these questions, but I do have a question about the chair. In 770, like the Rebbe's chair, tell me about it. I've seen videos of they in some way salute him walking down like the passageway and he sits in the chair, something like that.
Right. So let's talk about that. So simply speaking, first of all, the Gimel Tammuz, the Histalkus of the Rebbe, is a great traumatic event in Chabad. It was taken very, very hard by the Chabad community, I think by anyone that was connected to Chabad at the time as well. There was a lot of hopes and prayers. This is not like Shabtai Tzvi situation. The Rebbe was he fulfilled the criteria of Yaakov Kol Yisrael, Leilech Elbo, Lechazek Bitka. He fulfilled certain criteria of being Becheskas Mashiach. Many Rabbanim throughout the world and in Israel were happy to sign that the Rebbe was Becheskas Mashiach. The famous Psak Din, the Rebbe is Becheskas Mashiach. I met very older gentlemen, the Rabbi Shvitza from Kfar Yonah here in Israel, which is the official rabbi from the state of Kfar Yonah. He signed the Psak Din that the Rebbe is Becheskas Mashiach, and he told me he was proud of it, and that's what he.
He was based in Haifa, right?
Yeah. So to say the Rebbe was a man of merit, no question about it. Gimel Tammuz was a great trauma. Now, the Hasidim were torn. Half of them said, it's over, the Rebbe is just a person, it's over. And half the Hasidim said, no, the mission continues. The Rebbe left us with a mission, Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach. The Rebbe lives, not so much the Rebbe lives, but the legend, I would say, the legend of the Rebbe lives. The Rebbe becomes larger than life. The Rebbe's mission, the Rebbe's directives to Am Yisrael become larger than life. And that's what I'm seeing, this legendary status that comes with the Rebbe King Mashiach, okay? In other words, it's like you say Napoleon the Conqueror. He earned the title. So even though if he's dead or even if he's on an island somewhere, he earned the street cred. The Rebbe earned the title Rebbe King Mashiach by realigning Judaism's goals, realigning the optimistic vision that Am Yisrael should focus on the Geula, and that I think is the real. So the guys that are saying that the Rebbe passed on, they're physically saying he's physically in a box, he's physically in Queens, he's in the oil, and that's the end of that. And the guys that are saying the Rebbe lives, they're saying the mission of Kabbalah's greeting Mashiach continues, and nothing changes. And for them, to continue to respect the Rebbe by opening up the shvil, making a path for the Rebbe, setting up the Rebbe's place for prayer. We know that we're promised Tchias HaMesim. We say it 3 times a day in the davening. We know V'neman ata l'achayis mesim, Baruch ata Hashem echaya HaMesim. We say it 3 times a day, B'Shem U'Malchus. So and you ask the Hasidim in Crown Heights, what are you doing opening the shvil? What are you doing setting up the Rebbe's place for the Farbrengen or for the davening? They're going to tell you, we're waiting for the Hisgalus, we're waiting for the revelation of the Rebbe, and that revelation goes in line with simple Judaism, contemporary Judaism, which is waiting for Tchias HaMesim. We know that the tzaddikim are going to be resurrected, and so it doesn't go against basic halacha. There's no halacha that says you can't be,
That's one question.
respect the Rebbe.
Like back to like my friend Yehuda Haskalovich, he told me also that there's a group. I don't know if Messianism in general, but some of them actually will eat pork because of the Agadah that says that when Mashiach comes, pork will be kosher. Like, are you familiar with the idea?
So yeah, I want to talk about Yehuda Haskalovich. It's important to know the man, the legend. So let's talk about him for a minute. So Yehuda Haskalovich grew up. He's a very personal friend of mine, and I respect him, and I understand him. So Yehuda and I actually can say that Dr. Baruch Trapler, one of our lead Sanhedrin advisors, also said about him that he is the chassid that the Rebbe had in mind. He's a chassid that the Rebbe intended for.
I mean, I know that he's a good reference point just because he knows the community, but just the idea of that, I don't know how far people take midrashim, like when they think the Mashiach is going to give, like Chazer, like the missing component, right? But supposedly,
let's talk about Chazer. So let's talk about Chazer. That being said, that's where the question is coming from. I just wanted it to be clear. So now that being said, Chazer, we said that when Mashiach comes, regards the Evim Keves, Venamerim Gdi Bats. So we're going to have the wild animals, the animals of prey are going to tame themselves, and the lions are going to eat grass, even though it's much harder for them. In other words, a lion's going to eventually chew his cud. So the pig is also going to chew his cud. He's going to stop eating shit, and he's going to start eating grass. And the allegory or the example, of course, there's the physical manifestation of this, and then there's the allegorical manifestation of this. In other words, it first has to be a concept, and then it can be manifested in the real world. So that's the difference between, the Rambam separates Yemais HaMashiach, the natural, from Yemais HaMashiach, the supernatural. So in the natural Yemais HaMashiach, the Rambam says that the fact that the predatorial animals will live side by side is just an example. And what's the example? The example is that the nations of the world, which have predatorial traits, are going to tame themselves, and they're going to stop harassing and killing the Jews, or unaliving the Jews here on this platform. I'm sorry. Just like let's say an alligator. Let's say Hashem made the alligator with a line of teeth, and he is built to hunt. And specifically, that mouth is not good for eating grass and bamboo or like a panda bear, right? But let's say the alligator, out of the kindness of his heart and out of doing a research, a poll with his fellow animals, they tell him, you shouldn't be hunting other animals. Why don't you? That's like cannibalism. You're hunting your fellow animals. Why don't you start eating grass like the deers and like the kosher animals? So he says, okay, you know what? I'm going to start eating grass. And he breaks his nature to stop being a predator, even though he feels like he was built to be a predator. He breaks his nature in order to fix it. So that's how the nations are going to break their. In the beginning, it's just going to be the example that the nations are going to break their predatorial nature. They're going to try to serve Hashem more, try to get closer to Hashem. We also know that, for example, an animal, he enjoys tearing the other animal's flesh, seeing the pain, hearing the screams, seeing the blood fly out. That's the enjoyment of seeing suffering from someone else. So true. Even when I was in the zoo and I saw they threw a piece of meat a dead piece of meat, they threw it to the lions, and the lions ripped it, and they started tug of war with it, and they started running with it, and it's a dead piece of meat. Because the lion, he enjoys seeing the other person suffer. So we have this in the nature of a human being, unfortunately. that there's people that they're a schlechter Mensch, they're a bad person, and they enjoy seeing the other person suffer. Not they understand that he's suffering, they want him to suffer. So same thing, we have to change our nature, and when we change our nature, it's going to eventually impact the animal kingdom as well. So much so that the pig is going to chew his cud. So much so that the Sanhedrin is going to be able to say at some point, someone's going to come to the Sanhedrin with a pig and say, look, the two signs of the pig, of a kosher animal, is that it chews its cud and it has split hooves. This pig here is chewing its cud and it has split hooves. And we know that, just like I actually even go deeper, we know that a pig in the wild looks different than a pig that's on the barn, right? They physically change their whole anatomy. Some of them grow tusks out of the sides of their face, and they grow hair on their skin, and so on. So imagine that changing anatomy. We will be able to physically see that change in the pig into an animal that is a kosher animal. And when that time arrives and the Sanhedrin is standing and it can be proven without shadow of a doubt that the pig has changed and he has kosher signs, then we can say that that prophecy and that time of the Geula has begun. But today, if you take a pig, you'll see that he doesn't chew his cud. He's still eating shit, and he's still not kosher. You know.
All right, so I don't want to make the class too long. I want to take a few minutes just for like the outro and tell us about your website and how people can learn.
Okay, so I'm Yosef Edery. I'm a Sanhedrin advisor, and we have a website called mnglobal.org. MN Global is Mashiach News Global. mnglobal.org is where we are involved currently with. In general, we're involved in bringing Mashiach. Currently, specifically, in reestablishing the Sanhedrin, a court of 70, to bring more justice to the world. V'haser mimenu yagen v'anacha, to take away the anguish and the troubles that people have. We would like that this court should be fully functional for Jews and for non-Jews as well. And we would like to do it for the sake of justice, and also because that is important for the process of the Geula. That is important for the next mitzvahs, the next commandments of establishing a king, eradication of Amalek, and building the Beis Abchira. In Israel, we've visited the Yanuka, we visited Knesset members, the Sanhedrin is happening, and if you guys want to get involved in this, then please join us. And if you want to study Torah with us, please join our website, torahclub.com. We have a free option membership where you get access to a bunch of shiurim. And in general, if you go on our website, mnglobal.org, you'll see the links to our YouTube and all of our other stuff. We have the Torah Restoration Project, which is also a lot of shiurim still available now for those who want to learn.
Okay, awesome. Well, man, thank you. I appreciate you, Rabbi. Be good, man.
All the best. Thank you so much for having me.